Hi, and welcome to the Campus Experts Workshop Delivery module. By the end of this module, you should understand what an effective workshop looks like. You should be able to present a workshop on a given topic such as GitHub, and you should have prepared a workshop of your own to take forward into your school. One of the most powerful things we can do as community leaders of student groups is provide knowledge that isn't covered in the degree. For many of you, that will mean covering tools and technologies and other programming languages that aren't covered on their main degrees, whether they're studying computer science or even a non-technical topic. For example, many of us are interested in web technologies such as Node.js and React, and there just isn't a place for these on most degree courses right now, which leaves fertile ground for your community to be the place that members learn about these technologies. You may be wondering how this module differs from the public speaking module. Workshops are obviously a form of public speaking. You're up in front of people, teaching them how to do some activity. However, workshops diverge from public speaking in some particularly important ways. When we perform a workshop, it's typically best for it to be interactive to some degree and for the participants to be following along with the activity. This produces some unique challenges such as pacing. For example, is everyone keeping up with the exercise and are they able to progress to the next step? And with a workshop, unlike a traditional conference talk, you're not just in your slides. You're going to be doing things like running the programs live coding, accessing the shell, accessing external servers, and doing those technological aspects live can introduce some overhead. So in this module, we're going to hear from Brianna and Cynthia, two of the trainers at GitHub. The training team at GitHub delivers training to companies and other organizations that GitHub partners with to make sure that everyone there is comfortable using Git, GitHub, and related technologies such as GraphQL. And they do this in different ways. They run workshops in person, in webinars, and through the open enrollment training scheme you may have done if you followed Module 0. During the Spring 2017 Campus Expert cohort, Brianna and Cynthia actually delivered a talk about how they run GitHub workshops, and it also covered other techniques around running workshops in general. This talk is a really powerful resource for you. It not only covers running workshops and best practices around doing that, it also gives you a real material workshop to go and deliver straight away. By the end of this video, you should know how to deliver a GitHub workshop and be able to teach your peers. I hope you enjoy the video. We'll catch you on the other side.
So today, kind of what we're hoping to cover. First, I really want to find out from you guys how you're planning on teaching GitHub. I, obviously, as a music teacher, did not ever study computer science formally. I did all of my learning kind of on my own. So I would really like to hear about what that looks like in your communities. I know you've already done the community assessment step. And then we'll talk a bit about how GitHub teaches GitHub. So what that looks like for our training on the more formal side. And the teaching philosophy behind it. So kind of what we like to keep in the front of our mind when we're teaching, when we're developing new curriculum, kind of the guiding principles there. And also point you to some more resources. So as you are teaching and helping people learn about Git and GitHub, some good things that you probably already have seen. Joe and Hector are awesome, so you probably already know all that stuff, so it'll be quick. So this part, I would love to hear from you guys. You've been quiet so far, which is cool if you want to stay quiet. But how are you guys teaching GitHub? Like, what have you already taught, or have you not taught? What's the context for all that? Any brave takers? I'll wait. It's cool.
I'll go for it.
Awesome. Thank you, Willem.
So so this is teaching GitHub specifically, right? Not anything other technically. So
Whatever. It could be both.
So I mean, for like Git or GitHub specifically, I think it's mostly for me like hackathons. So people who I may be on the same team with, who kind of also need to use Git and GitHub because that's how we like collaborate. Then out of the kind of necessity, you teach them like the basics. You stage, you commit, then you push, and kind of set up the repo. And then GitHub is, I guess, more kind of self-explanatory. But in terms of like formally teaching like the class, I haven't really done that. But that's kind of been
very cool. I hadn't even thought about that, but that makes a lot of sense. You find yourself suddenly forced to work with somebody and they have no idea what you're doing. Nice. Do you see yourself teaching more formally in your education community or any place else, or is it really more of a one-on-one basis for now?
I think a lot of people are kind of interested in it. And we did for Hacktoberfest in our community, we did like an open source workshop.
Awesome.
And people came in kind of expecting to learn about Git because they felt like they didn't know enough. So now we're thinking about maybe we should do an explicit Git/GitHub workshop. And Joe's in London, so we might do that with him. So
perfect. That sounds awesome. Thank you. Thanks for speaking up about that. How about anybody else? Anything similar experiences or very different?
Yes, I've tried to like evangelize Git when we have to do some like not paper but some work in class and related to code. I try to use Git and to use Git and show GitHub. At least sometimes I end up only myself doing the Git part, and all the guys like email me the files, but like they see this that like this is cool and it's a good way to share code, and also I've done one time talk about it in in another like inside of another talk that was introducing like software development organized for guys that are studying CS.
Very cool. So it sounds like it kind of comes up on the like auxiliary to other topics a lot, but people don't necessarily dive into it head first.
Yeah, so the problem I see is that teachers don't mention even like version control in class. Yeah, so I try to at least to my friends to share this.
That's awesome. Well, thank you and good for you. Does anybody else have a similar experience that their teachers just don't talk about version control? Connor, really? Yeah. What? Every person raised their hand? That.
On that note, we get taught version control at university, so we kind of started the society back in September. We had like a GitHub workshop 2-3 weeks ago. So that went quite well. It was taught by a fellow student who also works in so he taught Git from scratch in like a 1 hour, 1.5 hour workshop, which is quite interactive and quite good.
That's awesome. That sounds like a lot of fun, a lot of information in an hour and a half. Okay, cool. Yeah.
It's slightly difficult because I tried running a workshop for a consult in the first meeting that we had, and it's actually quite tough to get people to get into it because they don't really understand what it does, and so they're not really interested in it, and it's quite hard for me to teach them as well because I'm quite used to doing it the command line way, like git bash, but a lot of them are new to bash to begin with, so it's been really, really tough trying to get them to work at the same pace because everyone comes at like different skill levels. So I guess we could use the desktop version, like the app thing that runs on the desktop, but personally, I don't know how that works either. So
yeah, no, and that's one of like so far a couple of common themes have come up. Like it's so much information in a short amount of time, and that everybody's at such a different level coming into it. Even if you can get them on board with the concept, which is a huge, something to jump over anyway, then maybe they want the command line, maybe they want desktop, maybe they don't want anything local. Yeah, no, we'll talk about kind of there's no answer, but we'll talk about some strategies for working with that. Does anybody else want to chime in? Are you guys ready to move on?
Hello.
Hi, Conrad.
So for my community, before I started programming, I couldn't find my way around GitHub, so I didn't even know what to do with GitHub, although I had seen it through so many software development blogs. But when I got into my university community and I heard about the Google Summer of Code, which promotes contribution to open source, I came to understand what GitHub was all about. So during the Google Summer of Code meetups, we actually try to we actually teach people how to use GitHub, beginning with how you clone repositories, do pull requests, branching, and writing comments and all the likes. So the main route through which we introduce people to GitHub in our community is actually telling them to join an open source organization, since you always have mentors who will better help you on how to get along using GitHub and the best styles you can use. And within my class, the computer science department, I actually created UBCSC, which was just because the name of my University of Boya. So it's just a group where I try to introduce my classmates and members of my department to GitHub. And all I did was we took projects we had worked on in class and try to help. So each group sits according to the project they had worked on in class, and you push those projects to GitHub just to get a feel of how GitHub works.
Awesome. That's a great place to start. I'm glad they're doing it in a, like your school's on board and helping move that along and helping people learn and at the same time get people excited about open source. And like you said, it's a good way to get many eyes on your code. That's awesome. Anybody else? I don't want to cut anybody off before we move on. All right, cool. There'll be more chances to talk about stuff. So I'm going to share my screen again here. All right. So thinking about, okay, first of all, thank you guys for sharing that. That was awesome. That helps me understand exactly where you're coming from and what you're hoping to get out of this and some of the challenges you're facing. Talking about how GitHub uses GitHub. There's a couple different ways. The first is, let's see if I can share this again. Like our formal training that I was telling you guys about. This would not really make a lot of sense for what you guys are doing, so I won't spend too much time talking about it. This is our website, just our services.github.com. You can see the training and kind of the resources we have there. The second most, the biggest way that we're trying to outreach is through these webinars we do sometimes, which is the same content from our in-person training and the on-demand curriculum, which I'm not sure if you guys have, I'm sure Hector has probably already told you guys about this. I'll throw a link in chat if I can find the button, which I can't. I'll put it in the Campus Expert Slack channel. This I would recommend sharing with people who are interested in learning. It's not really set up for classroom use, but I think Joe has actually used it in a classroom a few times with some success. Basically, it's just like a step-by-step way of working through GitHub. We have one for the desktop tool. I know, Sarah, you were mentioning this would be an opportunity to get people started. And it's just little bite-sized chunks of instructions of kind of how to get through. So this is still a work in progress. We're still working on this all the time. It's really pretty new. Hopefully this will be open source soon. So when you guys are teaching with this, you can have some suggestions. Pull requests are welcome. We found, so we do have a chat room that goes along with this. Traffic is still pretty slow because it's still pretty new. But there's been a lot of interest in even this desktop class. Now that this is launched, we had a significant drop in people in our webinars. So I think there's an interest for people to be able to learn at their own pace, which I'm sure is something you guys can relate to. When you're at school, everybody's busy, everybody has a lot of stuff going on, and being able to fit it into their own schedule is important. Train the trainer. Sometimes big companies, they want their own in-house trainer, so we'll teach them how to do that. How did you guys, I'm curious, so I know some of you already mentioned how you started to learn about Git and GitHub. I know I learned it, I was learning front-end web development, and it just was something, it was a necessity, right? It was just something I read about in a tutorial once, and so as I was building websites, I ended up using it, and didn't really understand how important it was until I royally screwed something up and needed to go back in time after I've totally broken something. But I think everybody finds their way to Git and GitHub in a different way. And I'm curious if anybody, we don't have to take too much time on this unless somebody really wants to talk about it, but does anybody want to share how you guys found out about Git and GitHub? It sounds like your communities aren't super aware of it.
Went for a hackathon. Had to use Git till we destroyed the repository a couple of times. Had my teammates pulling their hair out because I didn't merge commits very well.
That's funny. It sounds like maybe you might have been on a team with William at some point. Hackathons are a common place to talk about Git. That's awesome.
Yeah, same thing.
Oh, really? You learned about it?
I don't think we've been to a hackathon together, Sarah. Maybe soon. But I mean, I think where a lot of people learn about it in the community.
That's really interesting. I'd never heard that before.
Actually, I'm just thinking about this now. The way I discovered is there's this tool. So I used it in like a coursework project in school, and I didn't collaborate on it with anybody else. So it wasn't really actually that particularly useful. I think it was just me working on it. I didn't really need version control. But there's this tool called Gorse, which does animation of like Git projects over time that are like really cool and shows like how people contribute, and I wanted to use that. And because I needed to, and because it needed like a Git like repository as an input, I started using Git. So like no collaborative reason at all. I just wanted to have a nice visualization.
That's really funny. What was the name of that? How do you spell that tool name?
It's GOURCE.
Okay, I'm gonna have to look that up later. That one's new to me. And that was so inspiring that you're like, I want to make pretty pictures about my repositories. I have to learn Git.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's funny. Anybody else? Any interesting ways you stumbled upon Git, or like how you specifically learned the steps of Git? I know when I first started learning Git, I was one of the most confusing things, and it's not that confusing. I don't know why it was hard. You know, like when you create a repository, you can use Git and init and create one from scratch. You can also have an existing repository, like a project, turn it into a repository locally and then upload it to GitHub. Or you can start something on GitHub and then clone it. Like that, to me, there were so many sets of instructions and I couldn't figure out which was better, or I would do like both. Like I would clone it and then do Git and init because I was just trying to follow the instructions and they weren't very clear. And I think that kind of thing probably happens a lot. Just Git is awesome and it can do so many things, but sometimes there's too many choices of how to learn and how to start out, and that makes it really, really difficult sometimes. So we're going to talk about let me share my screen again, specific strategies of like how we can make that easier for people, how we can tune that down so it's not just a million ways to do one simple thing. Okay, let's see. So that kind of comes into the teaching philosophy and how we choose how to teach. And that's a learner's first thing. So we try and figure out exactly where the person is and then meet them there. Not always easy if you're teaching to a big group of people because everybody might be someplace different. One person might be totally comfortable on the command line. One person might have absolutely no comfort level there, and yada yada. But as much as possible, meeting people where they are is really important. We like to use the GitHub flow as that kind of common starting ground, and we'll get into a little bit more details about that. But finding just one thing to focus on that everybody can grasp is enormous. Obviously, the pace matters, and the order that you talk about things matter. Git being such a complex software and it's really, I don't know, it doesn't feel very tangible at first. It's really, just difficult to grasp the base concepts of it. If you go into a conversation about Git and start talking about some of those higher level concepts, like, different types of branching strategies, if you talk about a rebase to somebody who has no idea what a commit is or what a branch is or what version control is, they're going to be so lost from the very start. And they're going to be trying to relate everything back to rebase, even though that's not really a good mental model of how Git works. So the way that people are introduced to these concepts really can make a big difference to how long it takes them to understand it and grasp it. Focusing on the flow. So the GitHub flow, we'll talk about, like I said, that workflow where you create a branch, you make commits, pull request, collaborate, merge. Everybody at any level can learn from that. That's something that no matter how good you are at Git, keeping that simple workflow that's just a best practice. It's also something that's not so esoteric. If people are not used to the command line, they can kind of figure out that general shape of what that workflow is going to look like. So that's a really important point to focus on that. And we've already talked about when you guys have been teaching Git or GitHub. Sounds like a lot of one-on-one. Sounds like there's maybe some opportunities to do some larger group things, which is exciting, some workshops. So when we get to the resources kind of near the tail end of this, hopefully we can give you guys some good ideas on where to start if you're interested in hosting a meetup or some kind of workshop. By the way, and just feel free to interrupt me at any point. I didn't say that at the beginning, but I don't know if Hector and Joe have told you this. We do Zoom meetings like this all the time at GitHub. Once a day, we'll have a meetup with 10, 20 people on a Zoom call. And it's really weird for me to be talking for this long on any Zoom call. So please feel free to interrupt with any questions or comments at any point. Just Friendly PSA. Okay, so GitHub Flow. I posted an emoji there, but it's not showing up, which is sad. So can I see just like show of hands who's really comfortable or familiar with the GitHub Flow? All right. I have to click through because I'm sharing screen. Okay. So the GitHub Flow, well, good. Hopefully we'll all learn more about the GitHub Flow now. Is basically just a set of instructions along the way that you'd use when you're collaborating with Git and GitHub that are the best practice to how to get stuff done. If you're already used to working with Git, this seems like a no-brainer, but introducing this right at the start of teaching someone Git can really help them grasp all those other kind of complex pieces. So let me show, don't need this anymore. Guides.github.com. I'll post this in the Slack chat also. I use this visual, and so does like everybody on the training team all the time when we discuss the GitHub Flow, because it's interactive. You can go through, and as you click, it'll kind of give a description. So GitHub Flow starts off with this create a branch thing, which you guys know. When you're describing branches, most likely since you're going to be working in a community that doesn't know about version control, it won't be that difficult. People sometimes, if they're used to other version control systems like Subversion or some older centralized models, branches were super heavy and it was an actual whole copy of the project. So people avoided branching. It was like nerve-wracking, stuff broke all the time. But with Git, a branch is just a 40-character SHA-1 hash. So getting people to buy into the concept of branching early and branching often, like that can be the first thing out of your mouth. Like that's super important and something you should come back to a lot. So they create a branch. It's a safe place, you know, as you guys know, where you can make your changes. You don't have to worry about breaking anything in the production code. It's this master branch here. Talking about commits can be a rabbit hole. You guys probably know as you get into the more advanced commands like redoing history, the details of a commit structure are really important. You know, the parent-child relationship, the trees and blobs. When you're teaching to beginners, one of the most important things is just to frame commits not as a change, not like you save a Word document, you know, just a change, but it's a snapshot of the repository at that point in time. You know, any commit is a snapshot of the whole repository at that point in time. Just like repeat that in your head 100 times, talking about commit. Just like we encourage people to branch early, we want them to open a pull request early. This is a great, you know, time to talk about just collaboration, which you guys seem to be introducing Git and when you're already working with collaboration. So it makes a lot of sense to you guys and the people that you're teaching. Pull requests are where you compare two branches, which you guys already know. I hope this doesn't feel like I'm talking down to you guys and trying to teach you stuff you already know. If anything, I'm just trying to use the language that I would use when I'm teaching beginners. Pull requests can be confusing because they look a lot like issues, but they really are a comparison of two branches. So even when later on you continue to collaborate and make more commits, you are still just comparing those branches. So the pull request will update. The squirrel is for deploy. I don't know why they picked the squirrel other than it's cute, but the concept here is you can run your Travis CI, you know, you can do testing, you can actually deploy from your branch, and that's cool. Finally, when you merge, all of your commits are then included back onto the master branch. So you have a safe place to work on changes and actually get feedback for those changes without ever touching anything on master.
So can I ask something real quick?
Of course.
It's what we were mentioning, kind of pull request and like adding commits to it afterwards. I was reminded of a situation where basically a few people on a project I was working with, they thought that if you make a pull request, then it needs to be like final. And if there's something wrong with it, then the pull request gets closed and a new one needs to be created after someone like individually has updated the branch. Whereas, you know, obviously you can still update a pull request and don't need to close it and reopen it. So I think like the point I'm trying to make is, I think a lot of people, they know how to do many things, but they don't know if what they are doing is necessarily the right thing. So they're like scared to do it one way because they're not sure if that's like the accepted way. So how do you kind of help like say what the correct way is, because in my experience that comes mostly from like people using it themselves or seeing how other people use it, and it's a difficult thing to just like frontally like teach.
Right. No, that's a really great point. Thank you for bringing that up. So I think that problem, people aren't sure exactly how to handle something or they're not sure what to do, can come up in a lot of different places along the workflow or along their development process. Specifically for pull requests, that's something I think of any of the things, the things people can get wrong is a little bit easier. I think as long as people, as soon as they can realize that it's just a comparison between branches and that any, further updates to that branch will be reflected in the pull request, and even just showing them that, in our training, I'm not sure, I'd have to think harder about if our on-demand training link that I shared includes anything like that specifically. But if you can get someone's hands on a keyboard, you get them to create a pull request and then say, oh, hey, let's add something else locally, and then push it up and look at the pull request. Sometimes it doesn't click until you do it yourself, But but with all the other things, Git is hard, and it's not meant to be hard. It's very forgiving, but it's very hard. And there's 8,000 ways to skin an Octocat. Something somebody said in class once that totally cracked me up. And it's intimidating. So part of it is just being as clear as possible. But I think even bigger than that, it's just setting up like a culture where it's okay to make mistakes. And if, Git is forgiving, they would have to try so hard to really break anything. And everybody's learning all the time. So, making mistakes publicly and praising them and moving on is hard, but valued.
Cool, thanks.
Yeah, that's a good question. Anything else? Do you guys have any more questions about just like the general GitHub flow conversation? Cool. Let's move on. So the GitHub flow is important, super important. Just those 5, skipping the deploy step. It's these 5 steps. And as I said earlier, I think this is the binding glue between all levels of people getting used to Git. Any beginner can understand wanting to make changes in a safe environment without actually messing up their master code, right? But any really advanced user might, like you were saying, William, like they might mess up the pull request stage. They might do it in kind of a different order. They might not understand that it's just a comparison. You continue to work on it. So this is something I like to really focus on throughout all stages of the teaching, whether you're working on the command line and going through more advanced commits or other commands, or you're really starting from scratch and just walking them through what a repository looks like on github.com. I think this is a really good place to start. Oh, we are in time. By the way, I've never done this before, so I have no idea how long this is going to take. So hopefully we're somewhere around about where we ought to be. In terms of other topics and like the order, and Cynthia, please feel free to jump in and correct me at any point here or add to this. I was trying to think how we try to order the topics we talk about so that we don't overwhelm somebody new and that we put it in a logical order, because I think with Git, that's really important. Obviously, I think it's important that somebody understands what version control is and what it does and the role that GitHub plays. That can be a complex conversation, but I don't think it has to be. GitHub is where you interact with these repositories. You also have a local copy, that kind of thing. Generally, I'm guessing since you're working with, younger people that are in college, the interface of github.com will be pretty easy for them to navigate. But I still think walking through just saying, like, oh, this is the code tab. This is where all of the documents live. You see these words like branch and commits, and those are okay. Just like acknowledging all the different things, because there's a lot of complexities there. And then, going to the issues tab, just talking about really quickly what that is. A walkthrough over what a repository looks like doesn't have to take more than 10 minutes, but I think can give people a huge level of familiarity with vocabulary for one, and they can see how what they're actually going to be looking at and clicking on interacts with that workflow that is so important. Then
I'd like to ask a question. Hello.
Hi, yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, so I have a question here. For example, what you said in the beginning, where you had issues with whether to create repositories on GitHub and clone them, or creating them locally and using Git init to initialize the repository. So I had the same issue because when I started studying GitHub, learning about GitHub, I tried to use the book Pro Git, and so it talks mostly about Git itself. So at some point in time, I got confused with the relationship between Git and GitHub, and that was what caused most of the confusion on how to start a repository. So I'd like to know how important is it to let beginners, how important is it to tell beginners about the relationship between Git and GitHub, and how would you actually start telling them what are the ways you introduce a beginner to the relationship between Git and GitHub?
That's a great question. First of all, I'm glad that I'm not the only person who's had trouble with Git init and Git clone, because to this day, nobody else has ever told me they struggle with that. So thank you for that. I think my opinion on this is just my opinion. So Cynthia or any of you guys might have something different to say on this. I think it really depends on the person you're teaching or the people you're teaching. If they're like you and they've already been working with Pro Git, which is, I mean, it's the best place to learn Git, but it's also, I wouldn't call it beginner friendly. You know, that's like they're giving you all the information at once. I think it would be really important to tell that person where the difference is. You know, this is Git, this is GitHub, so they can sort the new information in their mind as they get it. If it's a true, like, very beginner who has had no experience with Git, I don't think it's as important right up front. But, you know, it's all case by case. If people are confused with that kind of thing about, okay, how do I Git clone, you know, anything where they're not sure if they're interacting with the remote repository on github.com or their local repository, I think is a good time to start that conversation. Usually what I say about it is, I mean, anything that you would go through in that repository walkthrough where you see, okay, the code tab, we see issues and pull requests, the pulse, you know, wiki, that's all GitHub. GitHub is built on top of Git to help you interact with your repositories. Git is just the commit structure, right? And the pointers, the refs. That's anything you can do with git add, git commit, git branch. You can merge, you know, and this one of the fuzziest areas is pull requests. You can merge and it's only Git. But once you have a pull request, once you have that conversation around it, that's when it becomes GitHub. There are some things that are both, like tags. There are tags that are just Git, and there's a little bit more of a complex way to do tags with GitHub that are a little bit gray area. I'm not sure does that sort of answer your question?
It does.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. So.
Sorry, may I add?
Yes.
So the problem I saw when I gave the talk about Git is that people sometimes don't understand that there is a difference between the local and the remote. So maybe do not teach like what GitHub is, but telling them that there is a remote repository and when they're interacting with that. And after that may come the difference between what is specifically on GitHub and not on any remote Git. So that, I think that helps.
Yeah, no, that's exact. And honestly, the way we do it in classes is we do not even bring up the difference between Git and GitHub in any big amount of detail. And we go through the workflow entirely on github.com. So we just do everything on one repository. We don't even talk about remotes and local copies until we get all the way through the concept of creating a branch on github.com, committing on github.com, all of that just there. Then when we clone the same repository locally, and we go through the same steps locally. You know, and that's depending on the group. Sometimes they don't need the full walkthrough on github.com. But for beginners, I think it's really helpful because especially like with Git, you have a copy of the code on master. You create a branch, you have another what feels like a copy of the code, and then you clone both of those branches. It's like suddenly there's so many copies of your code, and interacting with them feels really complicated, and like push and merge, or people confuse those words all the time because it's branch communication, but I don't know. So that's a really good point. Thank you for bringing that up, that if you can focus on github.com first and get them bought in there, then, moving on towards when you work locally, this is how you do it. I think that's a good way to look at it. And you guys walked us right into like the common questions. Those, I think, are some of those are the main things that come up, right? There's just so many copies of your code everywhere. Talking about the staging area, so like git add, why you need that comes up a lot. We like to do a git add -p. I'll put that in Slack too. Example to show when you do git add -p, you can actually stage little parts of a file instead of just a whole file at a time. That helps people wrap their heads around why we need a staging area. Oh, it's because we want our commits to be logical units of change, and this helps us not slow down our coding, just to work around Git. Once people master that and they feel really good about those, the workflow, they can do it on their remote, they can do it locally. That's when, people start to have the more complex questions, like what if we're both working on the same file? What if we're working on the same line, merge conflicts. So we go through merge conflicts, and then we go into rewriting history. Now, just for context, this that I've kind of outlined here would be covered over a 2-day, like in-person class. Like this would be a lot, like this isn't going to get covered in an hour or an hour and a half. If you do ever teach about rewriting history, like any rewriting history, like reset, hard, rebase, commit amend, anything that's cherry pick that will change a commit ID, it's really important to talk about commit structure. And you probably saw in ProGit when you were reading it that there's some really great illustrations about what exactly is a commit and the parent-child structure to that. Main reason being why it's so important is if you break a commit ID, if you change it and it's a parent, it's been pushed up to the remote, any children after that, any other commits that have been made or that might be being made on your colleagues' remote copies are going to break. And then other advanced topics that sometimes come up would follow then, like submodules, filter branch, but my guess is those would be not a good idea to do at any hackathon and would probably be way overkill for newbies. So yeah, I feel like that was a lot of information. That was an information dump. Questions or comments about that? Does it make sense? Is it similar to how you guys learned GitHub, or is it different? Just processing. Cool. I respect that. Okay.
So I learned like step by step, but not all at the same time, but as I needed, and also failing. So that was not the best way of learning.
I think failing is common in everybody's learning Git, though. I mean, Git's hard, and Git is hard. Everybody struggles with it at some point. I mean, I've never met anybody that was like, oh yeah, I just got it right the first time. It makes total sense. I never struggled at all. And I think being as open to the fact that it's hard and people are going to make mistakes makes it easier for people to jump in and try, because if they don't make mistakes, they're not going to be learning anything. They wouldn't be doing anything. Even if they follow a tutorial perfectly step by step for Git, they wouldn't be understanding the steps and the why, and that's when it gets more fun anyway,
But that's also why I want to teach people how to use it, because so they don't have to go through what.
So I'm curious, what resources did you find that you felt like you failed using them?
Not fail, but like I learned the very basic and started using, but I didn't know what anything was, and I was like blindly doing things. Not the best way. That's what I mean, and that's why I want to teach people. So yeah, they will fail. You will have merge conflict. You will break things, but having somebody that taught you, or like at least gave you good resources, is way better than doing it alone.
Awesome. Well, I can already tell you've it sounds like you've already been that person for a lot of people. So good for you. Good for all you guys. Exciting stuff. Some other resources that I want to share with you guys, and you might already have these. So on demand, I already shared. Depending on your group, your community, it might be a good thing just to kind of put out there and say, hey, you know, if you're curious, just go through this. It's not a complete Git education by any means, but it will get their feet wet in that workflow. Webinars, we do still have webinars, the GitHub for developers, and sometimes Git Essentials. So whether you guys are curious or if there's people in your community that are curious, they're free. They take quite a bit of time, but we also have recordings of them to send out. Have you guys seen these education lesson plans? They're cool. I'll put a link. Also, if you guys have the slides, you'll have them, but I'll put this all in the chat anyhow. So these are shared lesson plans that we've developed, like the training team has developed for these classes I've been telling you about, that we deliver to enterprise businesses. This is the same content. It's geared a little bit more toward a formal classroom setting. So it's been kind of reformatted and tweaked a bit. But Intro to GitHub, you know, just basic, good for everyone is the desktop. So yeah, check those out if you're interested in doing more of a group learning thing. Those are meant to be resources for how to actually go in like the order of how to teach it. And let's see if I can click these. The order of how to teach it, along with like how long they should take, that kind of thing. Git SCM, so this is that where you can find ProGit, like you were talking about. So has anybody read ProGit? Or is reading ProGit? Yeah, I don't blame you. I haven't read it front to back either. That would be a lot of time. But what was that?
I will read.
It's so ProGit is, I like to read it kind of section by section personally, because it's outlaid really well, so you can see kind of the sections. I also am not like, I hate to admit it, I don't love reading. I don't love just sitting down with a book. That's not my thing. But ProGit is really spelled out in a way where you can pick the parts you need, and this is like the source for documentation for Git. This is the place to go. I do want to find the commit. I wonder if it's this one. So they have a lot of examples. They go all the way through. I'm not sure exactly the page with the commit structure drawings, but they are
branching.
Is it? It's under
branching.
Awesome.
Yeah, just go there. And
Thank you, Cynthia.
Yep, there you go.
Cynthia's like the master. She's the best. Yeah, so these visuals for what a commit structure looks like, you know, the commit, the tree that makes up the commit, plus the metadata, along with this parent-child structure and how the commit ID matters from parent to child. This is a great resource, but as we were saying, not super duper beginner friendly. If you're just going to try and learn Git, to sit down with this book for the first time, unless you're a pro at reading documentation, which you may be, could be a little heavy. Even more than that, there are reference pages, which again, probably beating a dead horse, you probably already know about. The reference pages are the best. So if you're just really curious, what is Git push? What is this? You know, the description, all of the possible options and flags that you can do for every command. They're laid out really clearly here in a way that's easy to reference for other people and to share. Some other, just like Git cheat sheets. I'll put this in chat too. This is a PDF. This is, feel free to print this out. It's a two-page PDF. We put it on cardstock usually, with just some of the most basic commands that if you're just getting used to Git and you don't have it in your muscle memory yet, to have this by you where you can actually see these most common things is really helpful. And this other one, I could only find the image of it, but I really like that they put the commands kind of in order of that workflow that we were talking about. Since that workflow is the easiest way to wrap your head around it to begin with, and sometimes the transition from the workflow to the command line can be another one of the really big challenges to get over. I like being able to visualize those commands as they kind of happen and where they fit into the puzzle piece. So, take them for what they are. They're not perfect. They're what they are. Any other ideas for what resources have you guys found really helpful? Because I would like to beg, borrow, and steal those and share them with other people.
In terms of online resources, I've taken a look at Udacity and lynda.com, a lot of their tutorials on GitHub.
Awesome. What did you think?
I found they were pretty good because it's a big tutorial, so then they go through it step by step, and you can learn on your own pace as well. So it's something I really like.
Awesome. I'm glad to hear that. We're in such a weird position as trainers where we are developing our own content, but it's so non-competitive. It's always so exciting to hear there's other good content out there that people are liking. I think I did I'm in the middle of the Udacity one. And that's what with the videos, like you were saying, that go and really explain it as you go. They're really nice. Anybody else? When someone's like, I want to learn about Git, what link do you send them? Well, now you'll have a bunch of options to send them because I just sent you a bunch in Slack. I heard somebody go unmuted. In terms of content, that's all I've got. Cynthia, do you have anything that you want to add or share or mention?
No, I think you did a great job. Thank you.
Cool. Do you guys have any other questions or things you guys want to talk about?
I think the biggest challenge for my community to teach GitHub is I'm still not too confident in my skills yet because I haven't really been learning GitHub for that long a period of time. So to be able to stand in front of everybody else and making sure that what I'm teaching is the right material and the best practices, it's quite intimidating right now. So I think that's the biggest barrier for me right now is to be more comfortable with my own skill before teaching others.
Yeah, and that's hard. I think you should definitely look into those open source lesson plans because those are a really step-by-step thing, and there's a lot of language of how to describe things to help you out so you feel confident about what you're saying. On the other hand, though, I don't know if that ever gets 100% fully better because even like Cynthia could tell, a few weeks ago, I was teaching a class and this guy comes in and he sits in the front row with ProGit, that book that I haven't read, and I work at GitHub, and he smacks it down on the desk and I'm like, oh no, this guy's gonna know more than me. And it's every class I teach, there's always, probably everybody knows more than I do about something. And usually it's Git. It comes, they have a really great question. They know something I don't know. And even having the language in my own mouth to say, oh, I don't know the answer to that, but I'll look it up and get back to you. Or, oh, that's really interesting. I didn't know that, but I'm glad to learn it. That's really freeing to be comfortable saying that in front of a group of people. Not easy, but freeing. And I think with Git, there's I'm never going to know everything about Git. So don't let that ever hold you back because nobody's going to know everything about Git. And if you try to pretend you do, you're going to lose credibility because people know that you can't,
Hey, welcome back. Hope you enjoyed the video. So now we're going to talk about the exercise for this module. Now that you've seen Brianna and Cynthia's workshop and you've heard a little bit about how to run workshops, you should be able to propose a workshop plan of your own. So the exercise for this module, which as always you can find in the exercise folder in the subdirectory, is to take a technology or a topic that you know and care about and turn that into a plan for something that you'll present back to your campus in a short workshop session. Some things to think about as you do this are, how is this going to accommodate people of different ability levels? How do you onboard your teaching assistants and give them the materials they need to help you run this workshop? And how big a class can you accommodate with this workshop? You could then go a little bit further if you wanted to and turn this into an online material, such as a video or a blog. And when it's ready and you're done, go ahead and submit it. If you're not sure how to submit a trainee module exercise, you can follow the instructions below. Once you finish that exercise, you should try that workshop out, and there's no better place to do that than to the rest of your fellow Campus Expert trainees. In the README below, you'll find an issue where you can volunteer to stand up and give your workshop via a webinar to anyone else that wants to hear it. If you're unsure about whether this is for you, feel free to book a call with myself or one of the other campus reps, and we'd love to talk about your workshop with you. I'm really looking forward to seeing your workshops and what kind of technologies you're interested in. That's the end of this module. Catch you on the next one.